Fellow human beings, PowerGamer here. If you don't mind, I'd like to take a minute to talk about a very serious issue that is quite near and dear to my heart, and that is, of course, spontaneous combustion. Spontaneous combustion is a very serious issue that affects exactly 200 people every single year. That's 0.000000586% of the world population. Don't bother checking my math on that, my work is flawless. When a person begins to suffer from spontaneous combustion, their body continuously fills up with air, and it just keeps going and going until they can't take it anymore. My 23rd step-cousin's brother's daughter's neighbor's hairstylist spontaneously combusted last fall, and ever since then, it has been my mission to spread the word about this very important issue, and I think the best way to do that is to lure folks in with a discussion that at least 30 million people have experience with. Perfect.
New Super Mario Bros., a tried and true formula. The triumphant return of the genre that arguably saved video games, and New Super Mario Bros. Was a big deal in that it was the first new 2D Mario game in over a decade. There was the Super Mario Advance series, but those were just ports of older games. This was something completely original, which was kinda shocking since the mid-2000s was a weird era for 2D games. At the time, it was generally looked down upon, as 3D is what was really getting pushed, since it was still a lot more new and innovative. So almost every major console game was made in 3D, while 2D was relegated to handheld titles. And while this was still a handheld game, its success really put 2D back on the map and allowed for more games in this style to become popular again, even on consoles. Development began in late 2003, and the game was first revealed at E3 2004. It was intended to be a successor to the 4 Super Mario Advance games, and the main producer of the game, Hiroyuki Kimura, decided that it would serve as the equivalent to the 5th entry in that little sub-series. The developers were given a lot more freedom than the older 2D Mario games, since the DS was a much more powerful console than all of the previous ones. So they were able to add a lot more detail in the enemies, objects, and environments. The new hardware also allowed for much more advanced physics, which let them explore more unique gameplay mechanics. Interestingly, they were planning on the game not having voice acting as a nod to the other 2D Mario games, but they eventually decided to include it, which was ultimately for the best, in my opinion. A playable demo was available at E3 2005, which showed off a bunch of new features in the game, like the new level mechanics and power-ups. The game was released for the DS on May 15th, 2006 in North America, May 25th in Japan, June 8th in Europe, and June 30th in Australia. It was originally set to release on May 7th, but it was delayed for unknown reasons, though this release did line up very well with the new DS Lite, an enhanced redesign of the DS since the original was kinda gross. The game was an enormous success, becoming the best-selling DS game ever, and one of the best-selling video games of all time, period, with a whopping 30 million copies sold worldwide. In fact, to this day, it is the second best-selling mainline Mario game behind the original Super Mario Bros. Reception was pretty positive at the time, although some people felt the game lacked a bit of originality that came from the classic Mario games. And that ideology would only be magnified in the following years, as 3 more new Super Mario Bros. Games would release on other consoles, with the excitement dwindling for each passing entry. But the original does still have some fans, since it was a lot of people's first exposure to the Mario series, myself included.
I've said it before, but this is the first mainline Mario game I ever played in my life. My brother got it as a Christmas present, and he was so bad at the game, he couldn't even beat the first world. He just spent all his time playing the poker minigame, so I borrowed it from him sporadically and got a bit further, but didn't actually finish it until a few years later, where it basically just became mine at that point. I remember having a lot of fun with this game, but this will be my first time replaying it after becoming more familiar with the rest of the Mario series. Will it still hold up after all this time, or does it seem lacking compared to the previous Mario titles? Well, either way, I'm excited to finally play it again.
We open with Mario and Peach taking a nice afternoon stroll when Mario sees some commotion happening at the castle. When he goes to investigate, Bowser Jr. walks up behind Peach and kidnaps her, so Mario goes chasing after them, and that's really it. This game is as simple as the original Super Mario Bros. On the NES. Peach has been kidnapped, go save her. The only difference is that Bowser Jr. is here. They really went back to basics on this one, but it's not that big of a deal. The graphics are pretty solid for a DS game. They go for a 2.5D approach to the visuals, and the enemies vary between 2D sprites and 3D models. Thankfully, it doesn't look too jarring, since everything looks kinda crunchy, but that weirdly works to the game's benefit. The environments look solid, and Mario looks about as good as he did in 64 DS. The music is fantastic. I think this game has a criminally underrated soundtrack. There are some really great tunes in here, with the overworld theme and especially the castle theme being my favorites. And some of the enemies dance to certain parts of the soundtrack. That's just fun. Much like the story, the gameplay goes back to basics. It's the long-awaited return of the traditional 2D Mario formula, but with some nice modern updates. You still have the running, the jumping, the coins, the health system, and they even break back touching the flagpole from the original game in Lost Levels. But thankfully, it controls a lot better than the NES games, though I'd still prefer Super Mario World's controls, but this works fine enough. There's no spin jump, and you can't throw things vertically anymore, but we do have a few additions from the 3D Mario games. There's the wall jump, which is an awesome addition since it allows for more varied level design and can save you from certain death in some places. The ground pound by hitting down on the D-pad while in the air, which is nice. And the triple jump, which is way less helpful in 2D than it is in 3D, since 90% of the time when you need to reach a higher platform, all you need to do is run. The power-ups are also back to basics, since anything introduced in 3, World, or the Land games are not here. We had the classic trio of Mushroom, Flower, and Star, but that's it. Thankfully, this game has reached a balance balance of how health worked from 3 and World. You can still carry an extra item and activate it by tapping the bottom screen, but the flower always gives you 2 extra hits instead of the mushroom going into the box. This is extremely helpful. You can't mix and match items like in Worlds, but it's still a huge improvement. But there are 3 new power-ups, none of which are very good. The main one is the Mega Mushroom, which like most people I absolutely loved as a kid, not really a huge fan of as an adult. It causes you to grow massive and smash anything in your path, which is really fun, but you don't get to use it very often. When you do, you have to be in a level that will actually allow for it, since if the ceiling is too narrow or you need to pass through a door or pipe or something, you can't actually progress, so you just stand there waiting for it to wear off. Though I do like how it gives you extra lives depending on how much stuff you smash. On the other end of the spectrum, we have the Mini Mushroom, which takes the crown for my absolute least favorite power-up in Mario history. It shrinks you down, which makes your jump floatier, lets you pull a Jesus, and enter these mini pipes. Problem is, it doesn't give you an extra hit point, so 1 hit equals death. And they knew this power-up sucked because many of the game's extras require you to use it, and finding them is not very common, so it is infuriating trying to use this thing properly. It never returned in any other Mario game, and I am extremely grateful for that. Finally, we have the Blue Shell, which lets Mario use his enemies' Koopa powers against them. You hide in your shell when you push down, and if you run for a bit, you automatically start spinning, which can kill enemies and break blocks. Sounds cool, but you have basically no control when this happens, so it can very easily get you killed.
Yeah, sadly this game kind of dropped the ball with the powers, but thankfully the standard mushroom and fire flower work well enough so that it doesn't really matter. There's also the star, but you barely actually see it, so...
Like the NES games, 2 excluded, the game is divided into 8 worlds, each with a specific theme, some of which are brand new, some of which are tried and true. World 1 is grass, 2 is desert, 3 is water, 4 is jungle, 5 is ice, 6 is rock, 7 is sky, 8 is lava. Like 3 and onward, they're separated via world map, and revisiting previous levels is easier than ever before. In World and Land 2, you had to run across the entire map in order to return to stages you've already played, but here you can just tap the touchscreen to access any world you've been to. This both makes finding anything you missed much easier, and lets you grab extra power-ups that you might not have access to in the levels you're stuck on. The downside is if you leave, you have to start that level all over again since the checkpoint resets. Speaking of which, the level design in this game is honestly really good. It doesn't do anything as groundbreaking as some of the older games, but it does introduce some pretty fun new mechanics. Some pipes will launch you upward, letting you reach new areas. There's the spinning things that let you spin slowly towards the ground. Some platforms are bouncy. You can hijack a Lacitude cloud, letting you fly across the level, and there's a lot of world-specific hazards, like tornadoes in World 2 or the poison water in World 4. The new abilities you get, like the wall jump and ground pound, can lead to some pretty fun challenges. In terms of enemies, all the classic ones return, and there aren't that many new ones aside from 2 new bros. Yep, if you thought the Hammer Bros weren't annoying enough, we have the Fire Bros, which shoot fireballs that aren't that annoying, and the Boomerang Bros, which throw boomerangs, and I honestly think these guys are just as annoying as the Hammer Bros, since you have to avoid their attacks twice. Overall, this game is much easier than the past 2D Mario games. I assume this was done to better ease in newcomers, because the levels are much more forgiving, and the game absolutely showers you in extra lives. On top of the standard 100 coins and green mushrooms, which are much more common, there's the Mega Mushroom bonuses I mentioned earlier, and the game brings back Toad Houses from Mario 3. There's 3 types of these, which change depending on the color, and all of them feature toads worth giving you something. Red ones give you a random power-up that goes in your inventory, yellow ones give you a Mega Mushroom that also goes in your inventory, and green ones give you extra lives, which you can get a lot of. Plus, sometimes an extra Toad House will spawn at the beginning of the world, and unlike the older Mario games, your power-ups and lives don't reset if you save and quit the game. Because of this, you can end up with 30 lives before the end of World 1. Hell, I maxed out my life counter without even trying. Yeah, I have played this game before, but still, this was an absolute breeze compared to the classic games.
But much like Super Mario World, the real meat of this game's level design comes from the extra stuff.
Every level has 3 star coins you can grab, which aren't needed to beat the game, but you do want to grab them if you're going for 100%, or, you know, want an actual challenge. Most of them are pretty basic, you just need to jump on a specific platform. Others are more complicated, like making sure you take the correct path, which can be easy to miss. Some require you to do some pretty out-of-the-box thinking, and some are so cryptic it's nearly impossible to find them without the internet or just blind guessing. The star coins are used to buy extra paths in the overworld that can allow you to reach other levels or the Toad Houses, which I think is a nice reward for getting them. You not only get to experience more of the game, but you get some extra assistance in clearing everything out. Some of the levels also feature alternate exits, like in Super Mario World. Instead of a keyhole, they're signified by a red flag on the pole as opposed to the traditional black. These can also unlock secret levels, but most of the time they unlock alternate routes you can take, many of which result in skipping levels. Some of the worlds have these pipes which take you further ahead, allowing you to get through much faster, and others have these cannons that blast you into later worlds, meaning there's some you can skip entirely. Hell, even without skipping, 2 of the worlds are completely optional, since in order to even reach World 7 and 4, you have to beat the previous world's boss with a mini mushroom, which lets you take a different path. I told you they knew this thing sucked. Speaking of boss fights, they are much more varied than they were before. Instead of just fighting Bowser or the Koopalings over and over again, each world ends with a completely different boss, though the middle portion gets pretty repetitive. Each world features a tower stage and a castle stage, and beating them is the only way you can save your progress, aside from buying stuff. The tower is halfway through the worlds, while the castle is the end, and while the castles have unique boss fights, the towers just have you fight Bowser Jr. over and over again. He's basically this game's Boom Boom, since the fight is pretty much the same thing every time. He runs back and forth, and you jump on him 3 times as long as he isn't in a shell, or 2 times if you use the ground pound since it does more damage. Though later fights he puts his bandana on, which causes him to hide in his shell as soon as you go near him. You need to jump over him, and then jump on this green shell he throws at at you to then throw back at him, which lets you attack him. It does make the fight a bit more interesting, but it's still pretty monotonous. Oh yeah, you can also just do the old fireball spam, and that works perfectly well too.
Honestly, Bowser Jr. is kind of the real main villain of this game, since he's the one who actually kidnaps Peach and you fight him in every single world. He is technically working for Bowser, but Bowser's pretty much out of commission for most of this. Hell, every time you beat the major level, you see Bowser Jr. running off with Peach to your next destination.
Speaking of which, the overworld takes a page out of Mario 3's book with the wandering things. There's usually one or two of these flying blocks that appear in the overworld and gives you an extra power-up, which is the most common way to get the 3 new ones. And there's Hammer Bros walking around that don't stop you in place this time. Instead, they also appear in the levels, and killing it gives you an extra power-up, which is almost always a fire flower. Hey, I'm not complaining. The game also brings back the red coins from the 3D games, only they obviously had to fix them. Since this isn't a collectathon, these things would be about as useless as the blue coins in Sunshine. If you run through this ring, 8 red coins will appear, and if you grab them all before time runs out, you're given a mushroom if small, a fire flower if big, or a green mushroom if powered up. But this game isn't just a platformer, we've also got some side modes. For multiplayer, there's a versus mode called Mario vs. Luigi. 2 people play as Mario and Luigi, you pick a stage, and then duke it out trying to grab as many stars as possible. Whoever gets a certain amount first wins. Decent enough mode, but it's just a distraction. But we also have some mini-games, most of which are reused from Mario 64 DS. Snowball Slalom, Wanted, Witch Wiggler, Hide and Seek, Puzzle Panel, Concentration, Memory Match, Picture Poker, Paragon, Mario Slides, Sort Explode, Bounce and Trounce, Bomb Squad, and Trampoline Time Return. But we also have some new ones, so let's fire up the old Power Star meter. Whack-a-Monty is Whack-a-Mole. Tap the Monty Moles while not tapping the Luigis. Simple but fun. Danger Bob-omb Danger is a really fun one. You guide this Bob-omb while avoiding fireballs and the fire stream from the Bowser statue, and the longer you go without getting hit, the more points you get. It is the same chaotic fun as Sort and Explode, which makes it a total blast, no pun intended. Lacitude Launch is like Bob-omb Squad, only you're shooting spinies into these baskets. It's mildly fun. Balloon racing is you blow into the microphone to reach the top as fast as possible while avoiding obstacles. Kinda decent, if the microphone actually works. But there's a few other mini-games that are exclusive to multiplayer. We have Loves Me returning, why, and new stuff like Snowball Slam, where you throw snowballs at each other and use these snowmen to get more. It's not that interesting. Speed, where you put a card that's 1 higher or 1 lower, and whoever runs out first wins. Decent enough. Luigi's Thrilling Cards, you bet on whether or not your card is higher or lower than your opponent's. Not one of the best ones. Luigi Jack is just blackjack. You take cards to reach as close to 21 as possible without passing it. Bob-omb Reverse is Othello. You trap Bob-ombs of a certain color to turn them to your color, which I am really bad at. Bob-omb Sudden Death is Sort and Explode again, but if you fill a box, they get flung onto your opponent's side, which is really fun. Jumping Sudden Death is like Bounce and Trounce, only you're just avoiding spikes, which makes it pretty boring. And Bob-omb Trampoline is you bounce Bob-ombs back and forth, and whoever misses 5 times loses. Not bad. There's also a few versus minigames, which are basically the same thing as the single-player ones, only the players can slightly interact with you, so I'm not gonna bother ranking those.
Well, there is also Lacitude Launch, which, despite having the same name as the one from the single-player modes, is about slingshotting balls into other Lacitudes. No idea why they gave both of these the same name. But that's enough of the minigames, it's time for the boss fights.
World 1, you fight Bowser, and it's a repeat of the fight from the original game. Jump over him and hit this button to destroy the bridge, which causes him to fall into lava and burn into a skeleton. Fun! After this, they're all bigger enemies with the classic jumping on them 3 times method. World 2 is Mummy Pokey, a giant pokey that pops out of the ground. World 3 is Cheap Skipper, a cheap that swims beneath you and jumps up. World 4 is Mega Goomba, a giant Goomba that requires the use of these big platforms and ground pounds. World 5 is the returning PD Piranha Plant, who just flies and slips. World 6 is Monty Tank, a Monty Mole in a tank you have to jump up, which is annoying. And World 7 is Like a Thunder, a Lacitude that shoots lightning, which is actually much less annoying than the normal ones. World 8 is once again the toughest part of the game, since you got stuff like platforms you gotta shuffle on or hang off of, which limits your movement, or a level with this volcano that shoots falling boulders. Though again, these are nothing compared to the final worlds from the older games. Take out Bowser Jr. again, and reach the final castle where you fight Dry Bowser. His shots are much bigger, though the fight is still simple, you just gotta reach the button. But if you thought that was too easy, you're right, since Bowser Jr. runs off again, and this bridge appears showing you're only halfway through the world. Go through this next set of levels, go up the final tower with these snake blocks that piss me off when I first played this game, but now doesn't bother me that much. Fight Bowser Jr. one last time, and enter this giant fortress, which is the real final stage. This place is huge. In the first half, as you go through a bunch of doors and hit these buttons that flip everything upside down. Then the second half is yet another callback, where you have to run along the right path or else it repeats. Honestly, a pretty fun final level. In the end, you find Bowser Jr. with his father's remains. He throws them in this cauldron, bringing him back to life, leading to a father-son fight. First, you gotta take out Bowser Jr. while Bowser shoots fire at you, and then you gotta, of course, get past Bowser to hit the button. Though it's a bit trickier since he shoots waves of fire, and if he jumps on you, you get thrown back, so you can't just push through with a power-up. If you get beneath him, jump on the button to send him tumbling down one final time. Peach is rescued, she gives Mario a kiss, and we fade to black. Though after the credits, we see Bowser Jr. still dragging his father. He really worked overtime in this game. Jesus.
characters is really fun. It doesn't really add that much to the Mario series, and it can be a little too easy, but it's still a pretty good game. It controls really well, and the level design is great. If you somehow never played a Mario game before, I think this is one of the better ones to start with, and I hope I'm not too biased when saying that. It only takes about 4 hours to beat if you don't go for everything, and if you do, it can easily double that. Either way, I really enjoyed this game, and it will always hold a special place in my heart. Plus, my discussion on it has allowed me to continue to spread the word about spontaneous combustion. Let's see how many donations the charity has gotten. 53 cents? What the hell? Why is no one donating? Oh, right, no one cares about spontaneous combustion anymore because of these.